Welcome back to our class for today. Today we shall be discussing physics practicals, and this is lecture 1, the first lecture. Now, the practical aspect of physics is as important as both the objective and theory aspect. The practical aspect from the examiner's marking guide is 50 marks, and you are expected in the certificate exam to attempt 2 questions out of 3. So you will look at what I have put on the board. The distribution of scores are graded at the different subheadings that you are seeing. This should serve as an enlightenment campaign for all students who are going into any of these certificate exams that will take them to the university. The different subheadings that constitute distribution of scores per question, as you can see, are graded this way. Now, the first thing is the table of values. Table of values is also called observation table. Now, every year, if you go in for practicals, the marks allotted to each table of values ranges between 9 and 11 marks. It could be 10 marks, 9 or 10 marks or 11 marks. Then, the next thing that follows is graph. The marks for graph ranges between 5 and 6 marks. Most of the times it's 6 marks. Then the slope is 2 marks. We have deduction, which is usually 1 mark. We have evaluation, usually 1 mark. Accuracy, usually 1 mark, anywhere they apply. So deduction, evaluation, accuracies don't come every year. Sometimes they bring one of it or one of them, and then other times they may bring 2 of them. That's why I asterisk them, because they are not things that you experience in every exam. Then precautions. It's a compulsory task. You must state 2 precautions, and then for each precaution is 1 mark. 2 precautions will be 2 marks. Then we have theory part. The examiners will always want to test your theoretical knowledge of the practical question you are attempting. So the theory part is made up of B part 1 and then B part 2. Each of them 2 marks. You are expected to acquaint yourself with these subheadings so that it will help you to know where to express your stamina when you are in for the exam. Now, what that means is that your table of values, which carries almost 10 marks at an average, you must not joke with it. Followed by the graph. Don't joke with your graph. And then the slope too. Of course, 2 marks is not a little mark. And then precaution carries 2 marks. The B part carries 4 marks. So each of these divisions, you don't joke with any of them, because if you fail your practical, it's as good as saying that you are failing the entire exam. Imagine 50 marks only from the practical aspect. Now, we are going to be discussing the sensitivities that play out in each of these sections, what the examiners expect you to do in each of these sections or subdivisions that constitute the practical question. Now, the first subheading, which is observation table, we would like to see how what the examiner wants as far as table of values is concerned. Now, the table of values is made up of the rows and the columns where you record your readings depending on what they are asking you. So the number of experiments you are to do would be given to you from the question. Maybe you were to perform the experiment 5 times or 6 times, All right. So under the serial number, the number of experiments that you attempt, you record them. Let's say I am asked to take the readings 5 times. So I will stop at this point. Then you draw your line. Okay, draw your line. Try to be as smart as you can. If you are to take the reading for X, if you are to take the readings for Y, if there is a need for you to find X inverse, all right, or there is a need for you to find Y inverse, okay, the moment you have taken your readings for Y, for X and Y, the examiner might ask you anything. They might even ask you to determine the value of Y squared, or X squared, sorry, or they may decide to ask you to find the value of XY. All of those ones are evaluations, so you don't need to really. What would matter here is your ability to take the readings for X and Y respectively. Of course, if you have your prepared readings for X and Y and they ask you to find the product of X and Y, that will be easy. If they ask you to find inverse of X, it's easy. If they ask you to find inverse of Y, you use your calculator to assist evaluating the inverse of those variables. Now, the ultimate thing you are to do here is to make sure that your table of value is graduated into columns and then into rows as specified from the question. Just follow the question strictly. If they ask you to set up your experiment, you do that. If they ask you to take your reading of Y, when X is this, you have to do that. This is the most important thing you must not always forget. How to take your readings to required number of decimal places. Readings to decimal places. Very important. Now, somebody will ask, sometimes the marking guide will ask you to put some certain readings to 2 decimal places, sometimes to 3 decimal places, all right? But normally, all right, and consistently so, they don't ask you to go to as much as 4 decimal places or 5 decimal places. They would say at least 3 decimal places. And 3 decimal places applies to inverse values most of the times, or values that constitute determination of logarithm of a variable, or the cos or sine or cosine of a variable, right? So the readings that will have to do with evaluations, always make sure that it's to 3 decimal places at least. The use of this at least, most of the exams, very important, all right? They will tell you at least 3 decimal places, which means the minimum you can record your value is 3 decimal places. So sometimes the raw readings are taken to 2 decimal places and they will tell you at least to 2 decimal places, but in the question, nobody's going to tell you what decimal places to apply. So that one is not known to these candidates. The candidates are not aware of what decimal places. So in this class, I would like to guide you that every reading, to play on the safer side, every reading you take, whether it is reading the raw reading or you are having a converted value, always make sure that your readings are taken to 3 decimal places. If I'm going to take the reading of X, I will leave it to 3 decimal places. The reading of Y, 3 decimal places. Should they ask me to find X inverse, 3 decimal places, and then make sure that your approximations are applied as adequately as possible. So that's those are the ideas you need to know about table of values. Now, in our subsequent exercises we're going to solve, we shall be telling us some of the things that the examiners want you to have known that a lot of candidates don't know, and it affects their high scores in exam.